Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the NBA Front Office Show. We are almost to the start of the NBA Finals. Going to be an exciting one. We've got the Warriors taking on the Celtics, and we're already starting to hear some news around the league about offseason moves because, let's face it, 28 teams are not playing over the next week and a half or so, 2 weeks, just about, depending on how long the series goes. So there's a lot of kind of movements and things taking place as well for us to get into for teams that are not in the playoffs. So a lot to dive into today. I'm Trevor Lane. You can find me on Twitter at Trevor_Lane, over on Instagram at Trevor Lane NBA, joined by Keith Smith at Keith Smith NBA. Keith, before we get into all the latest news and notes and stuff, you guys had media day for the NBA Finals today. How did that go? Saw a lot of chatter out there about the NBA Finals logo and the script that was being used and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it's really cool that they brought the cursive back. It's just so much better. It just looks better. It feels cool. I think the best way to sum it up, and I think the guy who put it best was Jason Tatum, was asked what it feels like to be in the finals. And he's like, it's great. It kind of it's a culmination of all hard work, blah, blah, blah. He goes, but then I walk up here on the podium, I see the logo, and I'm like, damn, I'm in the finals.
Yeah.
And I thought that was like pretty cool to get that kind of raw answer out of him. So, yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of takeaways, right? Everybody, both teams are tough. Both teams are well coached. Nobody's giving any bulletin board material.
I was going to say, everybody careful what they say.
Yeah,
Nobody's saying anything that can be offensive to the other side or anything like that, right?
Exactly. You know how it goes. So yeah, it was a lot of canned answers, a lot of just appreciation for where they've been. The Warriors side was a lot of asking them about you're back after a couple down years. What did you think when you saw this? Some of the Celtics players were asked, what were you doing when the Warriors kind of started this run? And a couple of them were like, well, I was in high school, so that's kind of funny now. And there were some conversation to the Warriors side of like Steph, Draymond, and Clay. Are you guys the old heads now in the room and stuff? And Draymond said, yeah, basically. Steph said, I try not to think about that. And then Klay Thompson's like, nah, man, I'm 32, and anywhere else in life, that's not old. So kind of different perspectives from all three of them. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. And my other favorite answer was Steve Kerr was asked about how teams, they hunt mismatches so much now and how that's been a part of the game that's really changed over the last probably 6, 7, 8 years. And he gave a really funny answer. And at the end, he said, I'm glad they didn't do that when I played, or I might not have played very long. So I thought that was pretty good too.
I mean, he's right. Like, if you think about it, because we talk about this fairly often, just how much the NBA has changed over the last, decade, but over the last 2 decades, big time. A guy like Steve Kerr, who's, I don't want to try to limit him too much here, but he's really just a shooter, right? That's what he was as a basketball player. He was primarily just out there to provide shooting. Those guys don't really exist in the NBA anymore. I mean, there's some, but you have to be able to defend at a high level. You have to be able to do other things too, because of the way the league has become and the switching that you're talking about. So he's right, as funny as it is, but for a guy who played as long as he did in the NBA, what does he have, 14, 15-year career, he's also not wrong. I think that's a good thing for the NBA, that you've got to be able to do a lot of things in order to make it in this league.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's the one skill players, unless that one skill is elite defense, I think are starting to find it harder to stick. Look at Duncan Robinson. This was a guy who, the minute his shot fell off just enough that it didn't offset his ability or inability to really defend anybody, he didn't play anymore. He took him out of the rotation, and it was, people noticed it more in the playoffs. But he was out of the rotation for a considerable amount of the regular season too. He lost his starting role, and then he was really kind of out. Even before we got to the postseason, he wasn't playing as much and those kind of things. Now, you can get there, right? If he gets back to being a guy who's a 50% 3-point shooter, sure, then he'll play, and you'll find a room for him. But I think in the playoffs, it's really hard, because when you see the same team, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or not 8, but 4 to 7 times over a 2-week period, there's kind of no secrets by the time you get to game 4 or 5. It's you basically kind of know, what it is, and teams know, all right, hey, we run this action, we'll be able to get this look, and then it becomes, all right, are we going to double? How are we going to help this guy? And it is a very different game in that way than it used to be.
Yeah. Yeah, and Steve Kerr's going to have to be prepared because I think the Celtics are going to switch hunt Jordan Poole quite a bit.
Yeah,
I think they're probably going to go after Steph Curry as well to try to make him defend.
In the starting group for sure, yeah.
Yep. By the way, just a little fun tidbit here. Steve Kerr, for his career, not for his season, now defenses are different then, but for his career, 45% from 3. Unbelievable. Yeah. I mean, that's unreal.
And it was probably on fairly low attempts, right? Because the 3 ball wasn't necessarily emphasized for most of his career.
Highest number of attempts he did 2 seasons where he averaged 2.9 attempts per game.
That's crazy.
Which is, I mean, that's nothing. In today's
now
NBA,
he'd
right?
average out a quarter.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
It's so crazy.
The times they are a-changing.
Oh, yeah.
The times they are changing. All right. Should we get into our first news topic of the day
let's
here?
do it.
Actually, you know what? Before we do, real quick, injury updates. Anything coming out of Media Day that was noteworthy?
Yeah, not too much. Gary Payton, Otto Porter Jr., Andre Iguodala all practiced in full today. They did some scrimmaging. There was their first full contact work. They'll all be questionable for the Warriors, as they have been. Marcus Smart and Robert Williams will be questionable for the Celtics. Marcus Smart said, hey, the ankle thing is what it is. He basically said, his mom told him when he was a kid, if you're going to be out there, no excuses, just play. So that's, I think for the most part, he's good to go. Probably no real issues. But then Robert Williams, it's just going to be day to day. The Celtics are very hopeful that with the additional days off in this series in between games, that'll be really good for him, because that'll give him an extra day of rest to get himself ready to go again, versus the kind of every other day with travel nature of the prior rounds. That was just, it was getting to be really tough for him. So hopefully, hopefully we'll get to a point where all these guys are going and it just won't really be a storyline.
My guess is they're all going to play.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be my assumption. All right.
That's what I think too.
Let's get into the news. Let's start with this. The Nets have decided to defer the 76ers draft pick. Said, no, thank you. We do not want your pick this year. I believe it's 23rd.
23, yep.
We will take next year's pick instead. So this is sort of a gamble by the Nets that the 76ers will offer a worse pick, or perhaps just a vote of confidence in the depth of the future draft. But what are your thoughts on this decision? Does this make sense if you're the Nets to go ahead and say, no, we'll take another one?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things that probably went into this. My guess is for the Nets side, they're looking at it basically saying, yeah, we don't love what could be there at 23 this year. They have two guys that they added in the first round last year in Daron Sharp and man, the Boston accent is just pouring out of me. It's gonna be, they're in the finals, and I'm getting fired up like I'm back home. Daron Sharp and Cam Thomas, last year's first rounders. Kessler Edwards, who was a second rounder on a 2-way, played into a standard contract. So that's 3 rookies last year. I don't know that they're jumping at the idea, hey, let's add another one. They'd probably rather use that roster spot on. Let's bring in a veteran who can help next year. So that would be my guess. They're probably looking at it and saying, Philly 23rd pick, you could be worse next year. You could be a team that's picking 15 to 20 maybe, if things don't go right or you have injuries. Why not, right? The pick can't get much worse than 23. There's only 7 more picks after that. So and I think if you're the Nets, you're probably looking at it and really saying, hey, if it ends up 28 next year, it ends up 28, so be it. We'll figure that out with that. The other thing that maybe factors in just a little is this does hamper Philly on their ability to trade picks moving forward because they still have other obligations to the Nets that they have to pay off from the James Harden trade too. So that's just another kind of wrinkle in this as well. Philly can trade this pick, but this would be one where they would have to do it after they make it.
Correct.
Because now they owe a pick. Just for a quick refresher for everybody on the Stepien rules, it's always looking forward. You can't be without any pick in back-to-back years. Now they don't have a pick in 2024, because it goes to the Nets. So they can't trade this pick today, but what they could do is do one of those prearranged deals where they're picking for another team at 23, and then they trade the pick as soon as they made it. Because once it's made, it's now in the past. The looking forward no longer applies.
Correct. Yep, exactly. All right, let's jump to Utah. Quinn Snyder, his future with the Jazz, once again, looking a bit murky. Reports are that Quinn Snyder and the Jazz have been meeting. They've been meeting for a while. This sounds like the Jazz are doing everything they can to convince Quinn Snyder to stay. I don't know if we're at this point right now, and the Jazz have spent weeks saying, "Play out your contract, or we'll give you another contract, or what do you want, Quinn?" And you're still getting uncertainty here. That's not a great sign that Quinn Snyder really wants to be with the Utah Jazz.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think there is a whole thought process around this of, all right, what is it you do want and where do we want to go? And I'm sure from Quinn Snyder's side, there's probably some question of what are we doing with the roster? We keeping Mitchell, we keeping Gobert, we keeping both, we keeping neither. Where are we going with this? And I think that starts to become a little bit of a question mark there as well. So I just did a radio hit today in Salt Lake City, and we talked the finals heavily, but then we talked the Jazz. And I said, for a team that has very little flexibility, they're way over the tax. They're only going to have the taxpayer mid-level. They might have one of the more interesting off seasons because I really don't know what to expect, especially with Danny Ainge, running things. I could very easily see him saying, "Yeah, we're tearing it down and we're going to start it all over again." I really don't know what to expect out of this group.
Your gut. Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert, are they on the same team next season?
To start the year. Yeah, I think all three of the core guys, the two players and Snyder, will both be back in Utah to start the year, and then we'll see where it goes from there. I think it's going to be changes around them, and then it'll be let's give this one more run.
All right, let's jump to the Pistons, the Pacers, and the Spurs. They want Collin Sexton, potentially, with the Pistons and Pacers listed as the teams most likely to steal him away from the Cavs. Keith, you and I are both fans of Collin Sexton, probably bigger fans of Collin Sexton than most around the NBA because of the shooting percentage that he brings, which isn't always a sticky stat. I would guess that if he were to duplicate the season before this previous season, I keep calling this season last season. I don't know what to call it anymore. I'm all a jumble, but
it's funny.
Seasons ago.
Let me just, if I'm talking about the Celtics or the Warriors now, I'm thinking this season still. Right. Everybody else, that's last season. Because it's over, right? So I'm already into this season is this upcoming year. But it's tricky. We're living in two worlds right now.
But in any event, Collin Sexton, if he just duplicated what he did, I guess, last season, this season, it didn't suffer an injury, then I think it would be pretty clear he'd be getting paid by the Cavs. But the word is out there that the Cavs don't think anybody's going to offer him more than $20 million. They're looking to give him somewhere south of $18 million on a deal. His group is looking for more than that. I still think they're going to find a middle ground there, but it's important for Collin Sexton and his leverage that you've got these other teams that are out there kind of waiting in the wings like, hey, if the Cavs drop the ball, we're right here. Let's go.
Yeah, we always talk about who benefits from this. Three of the teams that look like they'll have cap space this summer, shocking, are interested in Collin Sexton. And it's important to remember, too, the Cavs, he's restricted, so they'll control the process to some extent here. So it's my guess is they're leaking their figures. So it's going to be, hey, you want him, you better pay more than this to get him. And then my guess is his side is kind of saying, hey, these cap space teams really want him. So it's not a whole, we got to really work out a sign and trade and all this other stuff to make that happen. So it's a little bit of posturing right now, but I think he'd be a really good, I don't, Spurs and Pacers, I'm a little less enthused about his fit there. I think Pistons, he'd be a great fit with Cade Cunningham, because what you'd have is he could play the off-ball role he plays in Cleveland. next to Cunningham on offense, and then he can be the primary on-ball defender. He's not a great defender, but he's competitive. He's tough enough that he can hang in there. So I do kind of like that fit in Detroit. Hopefully, my ideal is he just stays in Cleveland. I think that would be what's best, and they continue to build around that young group that they're putting together. But yeah, we'll see. My guess is something gets done and he sticks in Cleveland. That's what I think. And then if they need to handle it with a trade later, they'll handle it with a trade down the line.
Well, what I think is interesting is the reporting on this, and this is from Chris Fedora of the Cleveland Plain Dealer, is that the Cavs want to be somewhere between 15 to 18 million, and Collin Sexton wants to be somewhere between 18 to 22 million.
Yeah.
Well, that Venn diagram overlaps, right? So what,
18 million it is.
Just call it 18 million and off we go, right? I mean,
this is not
when it breaks that he gets an $18 million per year salary starting, we're gonna laugh.
Yeah, it's not that this is the team wants 15 million and he wants 30. Yeah. Well, that's a chasm of difference there. And okay, 18, 18.5, that work? All right, let's go. Right. I mean, it sounds like they're pretty much there.
All right, let's jump over to the Miami Heat. The hero we deserve, Tyler Herro, made some comments about wanting to be a starter with the Miami Heat. He's a really good sixth man. I mean, sixth man of the year. And now he's talking about wanting to be a bit more than that. How should Miami feel about that? Like, do you commit to Tyler Herro? And if you're Tyler Herro, of course you want that, because in general, starters make more than guys coming off the bench. Even if you're the sixth man of the year, that's just the way it goes. There's some exceptions. You look at, Manu Ginobili with the Spurs and things like that. But for the most part, if you are a really high-level bench player, you don't make as much as a starter does, or a really high-level starter. So it makes sense for Tyler Herro to want this. Should Miami want this, though? Should they want to put Tyler Herro into their starting lineup, or are they better suited just keeping him coming off the bench?
Yeah, I like what you said about the whole, like, you make more money as a starter. I forget who it was on Twitter. I wish I could remember now, but it was one of the people who's kind of in tune to things and just on a general NBA sphere. And they said, the reality is teams put a cap on guys who are six men. And that is true. I mean, and one of the probably there are two big examples in recent history, Jamal Crawford and Lou Williams. Those guys were huge parts of their team and parts of their team's success. But I don't know that either one made over $20 million in a season. And if they did, it wasn't very often, and it wasn't much over that. So that's the challenge. And, the Heat will be coming with a little bit of, you're a six man, so we're going to do this to keep costs down because we've got Bam on a max and Jimmy on a max and Kyle on a near max. We need to keep the number down a little bit. And then Herro side's going to be like, hey, start me. I'll score 20 to 25 points per game, and you'll see where that goes. So it's one of those things where this is going to be one of those negotiations to watch play out. To be clear, he's under contract for next year. This is his extension negotiations, but I do wonder too, if he's kind of making a little bit of waves about I'd like to start. There's two ways you could take that. One, you take it as good. He's competitive. He wants to start, right? Sure. Everybody wants to start. Or you could take it as, he still played 30 plus minutes per game in the regular season. Like, what are we complaining about here? The other thing I'll say is you put him in as a starter. Makes it a little bit harder to hide some of those minutes where teams will hunt him. We started out the show talking about that. Teams look for him when you're playing against backups groups, especially in the regular season. You're generally out there when there's two or three reserves on the floor, and those groups don't do as much of the mismatch hunting as the starting groups do. So, I'm curious. Hopefully Tyler Herro comes back with rededication to defense, trying to be a better defender, but he is really, really good. So I'm very curious to see, because this is going to set the baseline, I think, for a lot of six men going forward. Hey, Tyler Herro got 20 million. I'm not that far off him. Where do you think I'm worth, or what do you think I'm worth in my next contract?
Well, and plus, when you look at just his statistical profile, you look at what he brought in. I mean, Tyler Herro, 21, 5, and 7 coming off the bench in 32 minutes, like 33 minutes almost. If he was a starter, you're probably, and you've got a guy who's 22, who's putting up 21 points, 5 boards, and 4 assists, who is also a starter, we're talking max money, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so if you're Tyler Herro's camp and you're saying this, look at the numbers he just put up, and the only thing keeping him from getting max money is the fact that he's the sixth man. I think they have every reason why they'd be looking at this saying, yeah, give us a starting opportunity. And if he's putting up these stats, we're getting top dollar here.
Yeah, I wonder if this one becomes one of those ones where they just can't find the common ground on the extension talks, and then it just goes into restricted free agency in the summer of 2023, because it's going to be hard, because my guess is his group is going to be coming in asking for a max or near max deal. Maybe it's like the Jaylen Brown kind of max where it was just under, but then there's incentive language that could get him up to the max. Maybe that's where this goes. But yeah, this one is one to watch, because this is unique in the fact that he's carved out this great 6-man role, but clearly he doesn't really dig it. He doesn't want to be that. And what does a 6-man get paid? That's a big time question that will get answered here in the next couple of months.
By the way, I do just want to highlight this real quick here. This is the Miami Heat's playoff stats. If you are Miami, you're the other side of that negotiation. You're coming in there and you're pointing at this right here. Yeah. Tyler Herro with the worst defensive rating on the Miami Heat come playoff time.
Standard disclaimer, defensive rating is not an individual stat. True. There's Absolutely. Team stuff related, but it's at least contextual of when you watch and you see, it looked like Dedmon and Herro sucked on defense when they're on the floor, and then you look, I guess they did. Like that is pretty clear. Duncan Robinson as well. Now on the flip side of that, I mean, it drops off pretty good, right? Caleb Martin, PJ Tucker, like those guys are pretty decent. But yeah, you can see there's a pretty good gap there between those three guys here, Dedmon and Robinson, who were kind of big parts of their rotation for most of the year, and now are they struggled in the postseason.
And we should note too that Herro, part of that was he was playing hurt, and so I don't want to just say this is.
Well, that was only at the end though. I mean, he was fine early in the playoffs.
Sure, I know. We're only talking about a game or whatever, but I'm just saying in the playoffs, it's still a small sample size. One game where you're playing with a limp can have an outsized impact compared to one game during the course of a regular season. So I think that again, I'm just trying to say he's not a good defender, but maybe not quite as bad as just the playoff numbers make it look like. But the bottom line is still, if you're Miami in this negotiation, this is what you're pointing to. But I also think, Keith, you may be correct. We may be in one of those situations where they're just at an impasse and there's no solution that they come to, and both sides kind of move forward from there. And then we start hearing Tyler Herro trade rumors. Yeah, I mean,
I look at it as if they want to go get somebody, Bradley Beal, Zach LaVine, whoever it may be, and LaVine's not overly realistic because of hard cap reasons with the tax and that, but that's what they want to do. Herro has to almost be involved as basically the asset is in terms of a player that gets traded, and then you try to cobble together the salary matching in other ways. Challenge for them is Duncan. It would have to be Duncan Robinson, Herro plus, because Herro's contract is very low right now, still on his rookie scale deal. Or the option is, do you basically say, we kind of blew it with Kyle Lowry, and you flip that and say, all right, we're going to trade Lowry as the salary matching piece in a deal. I don't think that will happen, and that's why I don't think we're going to see the Heat going to get Bradley Beal or Zach LaVine or anybody like that. But I mean, the Heat are kind of like Lakers East. When there's a big name, they're going to be mentioned. Yep. Sometimes it's simply to drive their price up, and other times it's because I think in general, most guys, if you ask them to where would you like to play, and you could get them to be really honest, a lot of guys are going to say Miami or LA. Like, it's just the way it works. So, so it is one of those things where it's, if there's a big name involved, the Heat are going to be at least semi, even if it's only on the outer edges of it, they'll be involved with that player.
The Heat are Lakers Southeast. The Brooklyn Nets are Lakers Northeast.
Yeah, I don't want to give the Nets that much credit yet. Like, I mean, it's, I'm not trying to be mean, but like, they got two guys
for different reasons.
Different reasons. That's fair, I guess. Yeah.
I mean, in terms of their approach to roster building, the Nets took a similar approach to the Lakers, or you could say the Lakers took a similar approach to the Nets since they were the first one to put three together. But still, anyway, that's a whole other aside.
Yeah.
All right, let's finish things up with this. Today, it's the deadline for college players to withdraw from the NBA draft. I'll admit I've been occupied with other stuff. I haven't seen any major noteworthy decisions being made here. Most college players by now, they've got a pretty good sense of about where they're going to fall. They've gone through some team workouts and things like that. They've gotten some feedback. For some, it makes more sense to go back and spend another year and then come back out and test the water again. But by this point in the process, you've got a handful of team workouts done, maybe more, and guys have a better idea of where they're at, and so they've got the ability to make that decision in terms of whether or not they actually want to stay in the draft.
Yeah, probably the biggest name that is going back to school is Terquavian Smith out of NC State. He was projected to be a mid-first round pick. He was one of the real risers in the process, and he's going to go back to school. There's still a couple guys we're waiting on. Drew Timme of Gonzaga. And some of these guys may have made decisions over the last hour or so. I was on media day stuff and then jumped right into recording here. But we're down to it now. The NBA's withdrawal deadline is not until June 13th. Why are they different? Because it's the NCAA and they do things weirdly. It's because their coaches already think. Yeah, they're not the same.
Difficult.
Yeah, exactly. And they're not the same organization. They don't have to do. They can do things the way they want to do them, however they want to do them. And it's also important to note too, with the NCAA, that their responsibilities to their schools, teams, and coaches who are trying to know, what do I have going into next year? Sure. A lot of these schools will be headed off in the next few weeks, off to a summer trip. Sometimes they go abroad and those kind of things. Those are coming back now that we're getting, further into the post-COVID world or new post-COVID world, whatever we're going to call it, because COVID's obviously still hanging around, sure. but it'll be, really, I think, something we're going to see. But yeah, so it's college players today by 11:59 p.m. Eastern have to withdraw from the draft, and then June 13th at 5 p.m. is the NCAA or the NBA's rather withdrawal deadline, and then the draft on the 23rd of June. So it's always 10 days out for the NBA. So that'll be international players. Occasionally we'll get like a G League guy. We'll opt out and say, I'm gonna wait and I'll go in next year or those kind of things. Every once in a while too, you'll get a college player who stayed in. Then they'll opt out, and then what they'll do is they'll go play in the G League or play overseas, and then they'll re-enter as a different kind of early entry candidate in the next year.
Yeah, that's another way to go about it. We're getting more and more ways to get into the NBA than the traditional.
Which is a good thing.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yep. I agree 100%. Yep. Especially, even from the background of an educator, how, the college experience, the college route, and obviously, we're not just talking about education, but that isn't for everybody. It's not the right approach. Even if your goal is to do other things in life and not just professional basketball, the experience that you get playing overseas may ultimately serve you better than the college route. I think having these multiple paths, it's a positive thing for the NBA. It's a positive thing for players who want to become professionals. And it's cool to see the diversification of the entry path into the NBA over the last, it's really started to shift over the last 5-6 years or so. We've seen these other paths become more accepted.
And I think it's great too with the new NIL stuff. As long as the NCAA doesn't butcher that too badly, I think it's good that you can have kids making money in college too, off their name. I mean, Lord knows these schools make enough money. Like it's, I have no problem with the kids making a little bit of money too, if that's, where this should go. And I know there's all sorts of stuff that gets into that could cause problems, but that's for a whole other time.
All right. Well, let's wrap things up there. Yeah. Appreciate everybody for joining us. Make sure that you do subscribe to the NBA Front Office YouTube channel. Turn on.
Hey, let us know what you think of the new format here too, where we're doing something a little bit different. So give us some feedback. I saw
on yesterday's shows, there's a guy who's been going in and has been doing timestamps for all of our videos.
Yep.
And yesterday he said he kind of celebrated, said he gets to retire because now people can just look and see our topics on the bottom of the screen.
That's funny.
I would highly encourage everybody just watch the whole show.
Yeah, just watch the whole show.
Just watch the whole
It's
show,
all
just for us.
Yeah,
just
it's all
to be
great
nice.
stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. But still, I guess he's correct there that that now our topics are on the bottom of the screen as we go through everything, which I think is nice. But yeah, let us know your thoughts. You saw today with the Tyler Herro thing. I got to kind of cut over to some stats and some things like that we can get into. Some different things that we can use to kind of underscore our points, and there's other stuff that we're going to be able to implement, particularly when we get into the draft and we get into all that kind of stuff. We'll be able to use a lot of the tools here. So let us know your thoughts on the new format. Fire those off in the comments section. Don't forget to follow us over on Apple Podcasts. Make sure that you do leave us that 5-star rating. We would really appreciate it, and a review. Great way to help out the show. Till next time, everybody. See ya and stay safe.